did you go to school?
And here's your...
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason moron.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink guy? Is this what pink guy is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
Please go outside and look at the mini quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Conditional Release program for an episode that is basically just about cooker bullshit because I've been left alone. I'm home alone, and Mr. Insider, he's off in New Zealand discovering his ancestry or some shit. Do you guys know he was part Kiwi? I didn't know until recently. I don't know if he knew until recently. I don't know. Yeah, it's gross. Anyway, he's going some sort of come of age thing. He's going to come back with some sort of shit accent, fush and chops, blah, blah, talking about how Russell Crowe and Crowded House are basically his cousins. They're both Australian. We don't care. But I'm going to draw the line at doing the haka, but he will almost certainly end up throwing some badly pronounced Maori terms when he gets back. There'll be this sort of annoying sense of smug legitimacy. Don't cave into that. But we do still love him, warts and all, and we're looking forward to him coming back. And I really hope this solo episode doesn't suck because I put a stupid amount of work into it. I'm trying to channel my inner Neil Saunders and don't expect the lacerating similes he does because I just don't have that in me. It's not there. I'm also trialing a video record, which will likely end up being just for patrons because it'll probably be shit. But it might end up on YouTube. To be honest, I've got no idea when it comes to YouTube. I have the aesthetic sense of a drunk toddler. And oh yeah, speaking of drunk toddlers, as usual, this episode is brought to you by CBCO, who are still doing their 10% off code with CRP10 at checkout. And I stand by my claim, their RPA is one of the better ones on the offer. I wish I had one right now. I ran out. So send me some more. But their NEPA is also a very fine drop. And the NEPA is great because that sort of tastes the same as all the other ones on offer, which is good. I mean, that's not such a bad thing. It's cheaper than folks like Mountain Culture who have Gab scores coming out their ass. And it's basically the same thing. So it's fruity beer. You can't see through. The hazy thing's nice. Go to CBCO Beer and grab some. Use the discount code. I strongly recommend you get the yellow RPAs, but if you like that sort of, NEPA thing, fine. We don't get a cut from this, but it does make us look good if you do it. So please do. And also 10% off. They're really good prices. Now, time to look at some literal cooker bullshit and answer the question on the minds of many in the past week or so. What the fuck is Bovaer?
I still haven't worked it out yet. And if you haven't worked it out, keep asking the question. And keep looking for the answers. Because it's irrelevant.
So, Bovaer. I mean, I was looking at the weekly specials on my favourite Western Sydney discount meat outlet, as you do, and I noticed someone moaning in several comment threads, like all the same posts, copy and pasted, about whether the beef on offer had Bovaer in it. Now, the comment had that sort of decidedly annoying tone to it, which sort of reeked of cooker outrage. So I had to dive in and find out what he was on about. Massive tanky. Oh, don't ever click through to the profile. So this is the current thing, right? Well, cookers are conservatives and tankies alike who have been basically told to be angry at this product. You know who's pulling the strings on this sort of thing. Fossil fuel industry. We'll go into that. So I watched a GB News segment to try and find like a decent argument against this product. Maybe like it's probably the best place to find it. And it was just all speculative nonsense and fear-mongering. You know what I mean. One of them, a Reform UK candidate, genius, casually mentioned that aspartame is a similar product. Okay. Which we eat directly, and has been proven to be dangerous. Okay. Now, this is something that I did believe in very strongly when I was in year 10. I even did a school assignment on it, which I got really bad marks for, and I thought that was basically because they were all against me. It turns out it was just a shit assignment based on cooker nonsense and conspiratorial bullshit. But it has turned out to be mostly bollocks. I interacted with a lot of families who believed they had adverse reactions to aspartame, and I would imagine they basically had a sensitivity to it and they really shouldn't drink it. And yes, some of these people are drinking like 4 liters of Diet Kool-Aid a day. Don't do that. I mean, if it makes you break out in a rash, don't do it. Anyway, if you want to know about aspartame, I can summarize it. It's as carcinogenic as sunlight, the thing that FDA are having a war against, apparently, according to RFK Jr. And you need to drink about 40 tins of Coke Zero to go above the recommended dose into danger territory. That's a lot. That's Donald Trump sort of territory. Although he drinks Diet Coke for reasons I can't fathom. They're kind of the same product, to be honest. She also said that it's banned in some countries. Now, I could not find evidence that would back up that flippant but rather serious claim. Just pooped it out of her mouth. Indonesia considered banning it in something like 2005. I should have written that down. And the other efforts have made to ban it, they're all like, weird states in the US and just bullshit stunts by legislators. None of them have really got through. They've generally speaking faced the problematic hurdle of there being fuck all actual evidence of harm outside of, sort of anecdotal reports and general bullshit. Woolworths in South Africa actually removed from their own brand foods, not because of any harm, but in the name of food democracy, which is a very corporate buzzword they appear to have made up because consumers sent letters expressing their concerns about the substance and they addressed them by removing aspartame from their product. Fine. I mean, of course, this is touted by aspartame opponents as being a reason to believe it's harmful because they're disingenuous fuckheads. But they replace aspartame with cyclamates, which also have concerns of a cancer risk. But there's no letter writing campaign. So, hey, look, democracy works, right? Fuck. Who cares? So, look, I didn't actually really need to do that bit, but it was really hard not to fact check GB News. I was about to say GB News. When some idiot says something that just feels obviously full of shit, you have to look into it. Now, they also tried desperately to link it to Bill Gates, which we'll discuss in a bit. And they do clarify at the end, to their credit, quite thoroughly, that Bovaer is not linked to Gates. But why did they bring it up? I'm just going to say that's because their audience is stupid and they fucking know it. And now I'm going to give a very rare tip of the hat to Today's Show and Dr. Nick Coatsworth, who was brought on for some reason, who not only had a very reasonable take on Bovaer and the whole situation around it, but also made a very funny joke about adding it to your flatulent partner's breakfast cereal. And yeah, well done. That was funny, though don't actually do that, as we will discuss later, especially if you're trying to have children. But this stuff is best left for cows to eat, which is sort of on the label as well. So what is Bovaer? So basically, Bovaer is a feed supplement for cattle, which reduces their flatulence and therefore reduces their methane emissions, which is kind of simple. But, I mean, look, what's the point, right? Well, methane is a bastard of a thing for the climate. It's a really shitty climate gas, so reducing this is a good thing. We want this. And we do live in strange times. The reality is that the burping and farting from millions of cows has a direct impact on the temperature of the planet. As dumb as that sounds, it's just how things go. So it's been approximated that 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the mouths and asses of delicious cows. That is insane. There are other figures. The UN says 11%, and apparently a peer-reviewed study put it as high as 19.6%. Either way, that is a significant accelerator of climate change. But of course, not only do conservatives and cookers alike deny the realities of human-driven causes of climate change, or in this case, bovine-driven causes of climate change, they also get really angry about possible solutions to it. But of course, they just also like being angry. They're used to the brain chemicals that make them feel like they have purpose. So one of the major drivers behind the idea that we're all going to be forced to eat bugs is the theory that emissions from cattle will result in either a cost-prohibitive carbon credit penalty system on cattle farmers or some kind of regulation that limits consumption in order to basically protect the climate. And this is usually tied in with this sort of digital ID hysteria. You go to beep your card at the checkout and it says, you've had your allotment of beef this week, which is, of course, another argument against the transition away from cash. I get it. But with this in mind, I must admit, there may well be carbon taxes imposed on cattle farmers. This is very possible because climate change is real. But it's not the end of beef as we know it. To be honest, it's not as we know it. It's the developing world who are not going to be eating beef. But it may increase the cost to dissuade consumption. And to give an example of this, in Denmark, a carbon tax on methane is being imposed, which is charged per tonne of emissions. And this is set to begin in 2030. This leaves a fair bit of time to use solutions like Bovaer to reduce the impact of cattle emissions and therefore reduce the imposition of the carbon tax. That's how it's meant to work. It's meant to incentivize people to reduce emissions. This is the system working. As much as I hate neoliberal approaches to solving problems, you can't argue with the arithmetic here. So, of course, they piss and moan about how steaks are about to become a thing of the past on shitty YouTube videos because of climate change and Klaus Schwab. Of course, the former they don't believe in, the second they think is Batman. But now there is a solution. And they're moaning about the fucking solution. So basically anything that isn't adding carbon into the atmosphere through a giant tube from a coal mine in Western Australia makes these people very upset, irrationally upset. It's very fucking frustrating. But of course, this is because they've been completely brainwashed by the fossil fuel industry. If they want to believe in a conspiracy, maybe they should tune into that one because Bob Mercer has done a great job of convincing themselves of this bullshit. Oh my God. Well done. So the active ingredient in Bovaer is 3-nitroxypropanol or 3-NOP. I'm not going to go into the chemistry. You can find it somewhere else. But this term is thrown around a lot on social and mainstream media because it sounds really scary. 3-NOP. Ooh, scary chemical name. Fuck. Oh, that's so bad. What it does is suppress the enzyme that forms in a cow's rumen, which is basically a part of their stomach, which it's the thing that makes them gassy. Basically, limiting this enzyme does not prevent digestion. The cows are fine. If anything, they gain more weight. But it simply prevents the generation of these gases during the process of digestion. It really doesn't seem to have much collateral damage, if any. So the reduction of methane is around 45% in beef cattle and around 30% in dairy cows, which is not bad. I mean, this goes up and down depending on who you ask, but it's mostly about variables like how long cows hang out in the feedlot compared to milling around eating grass. But at the end of the day, it works. So the company's website states this: Bovaer is the most extensively studied and scientifically proven solution to the challenge of burped methane to date, with 100 plus on-farm trials in 20 plus countries and more than 70 peer-reviewed scientific studies. In every case, it is proven safe for animal, farmer, and consumer. Now, I usually get Jack to read those, and then I get to have a drink. This is making it very difficult. I don't have drink breaks. So, according to the inventor, I listened to a podcast. The molecule naturally breaks down during the process of digestion and is not found in either meat, milk, or manure. Trifecta, right? Of course, this is what happens with mRNA as well, but they didn't listen to that. It breaks down naturally and quite quickly. This did not placate cookers at all about the experimental jab, of course. You all know how that played out. And it really hasn't penetrated the brains of the people in the comment section of the Coles Facebook page. And fucking YouTube. Oh, my God. So most of the current outrage comes from the announcement from the Danish-Swedish company Isle of Foods, which owns the UK's biggest dairy cooperative and plans to team up with British retailers like Tesco, Morrison's, Aldi, the usual, to introduce Bovaer-fed dairy products into their product lines. Cool. Now, Isle of Foods sounds a bit vague and foreign, but they're the ones who make Lurpak. So now I bet you know who I'm talking about. It's basically the Carlsberg of butter, right? Probably the best butter in the world. I can't tell the difference. Liz likes it. So their plan to implement Bovaer at dairy farms supplying Isle of Foods is being called a trial, which is a massive trigger word for idiots. They love the fucking word trial. Oh my God, it's a trial. It hasn't been tested. It has been tested. Look at the statement before. This is the thing they do, though. They go as far as suggest this is like, they say it's a part of a global culling program, that it's going to somehow eradicate humanity. Now, that goes from trial to dumb really quickly. But of course, when it comes to this sort of shit, this sort of hysteria, A, people are farming for clicks, and B, it's really easy to make someone scared about something because we are always, once again and always forever, about to be killed by something we simply don't understand. Now, the other thing is it's meant to basically either feminize men or sterilize men, that sort of children of men thing, can't have kids anymore, blah, blah, blah. This is becoming the point of really heavily regurgitated, heavily circulated things, perpetually online morons, mostly on Twitter. I must say, I no longer even have to go to Telegram anymore. Twitter is a goldmine of bullshit. And most of them are quoting a study on rats we're going to look at later, but they often leave out some fairly important details, really important details, because these people fucking hate context. It just ruins the story. Oh, it makes it so boring. It was so much more scary when it was about rats. So it appears that products using Bovaer, for better or worse, will not be labelled. Now, I want to pause on here on my outrage train and say, I don't know how I feel about this. I've got mixed feelings. Channel 10, for some reason, asked a very good friend of the podcast, John Ruddick, what he thought about this. And while he moaned about additives in food, he's a bit like that these days, he also said that it should be labelled. Libertarians love a bit of labeling. Fair enough. Not government mandated labeling, though. It's just saying it should be labeled. Well, on face value, I kind of see an argument here. So to avoid this product, people will basically have to make decisions based on brands and products who have made statements, often online, on their use of Bovaer, more than sort of the information provided on packaging at the time. And this makes it more difficult to make an informed choice outside of just reaching for the vastly more expensive organic option. I don't completely agree with that. But this is arguably a bad thing. Food labeling should be comprehensive and inform consumers properly. But I'm going to go a bit back on this because when you consider how many chemicals and products are used in modern agriculture, where does it end? It would be absurd to list them all. We're going to go the glyphosate. We're going to go what? We're going to go the next thing of what kind of seeds they use for the feedlot. Like, where does this end? The only real reason this is causing outrage is because cookers get irrationally angry about proposed solutions to climate change because it's classic fossil fuel lobby propaganda. This is what they do. Anytime someone tries to fix a climate change problem, there has to be a bunch of ferals frothing about it for reasons they don't understand. There are about 100 things that should be on the packet of a basic piece of butter or a carton of milk. But if Bovaer was to be on there, I mean, why not the rest? This is the thing. The fossil fuel industry doesn't care about those things. And nobody actually cares about those things unless explicitly told to be angry about it. So the lack of labeling has also made the boycott even funnier, which is unintentionally funny. And like I say, I still have mixed feelings about it. But considering that people who are dramatically pouring milk down the drain, they have absolutely no idea where Bovaer was used in the production of the milk or not. They're saying things like they want full fart milk. Oh, that's so funny. This is the hilarious little term for basically pointlessly harming the environment. They're also posting pictures of fridges full of milk, claiming the supermarkets can't sell the newly poisoned product. And the boycott is working. I don't think I need to explain why that's incredibly stupid, but just as a general rule, fridges are meant to have the milk in them. They've got staff that put them in there anyway. Thanks. So Arla said in a statement on the safety of Bovaer, and this is the fucking end of the conversation. Bovaer has already been extensively and safely used across Europe, and at no point during the trial will there be any impact on the milk as it does not pass from the cow into the milk. It's already being used. There's no impact on the milk. They've had a look. It's not happening. There's nothing in there. It doesn't go through. It breaks down. Natural. So, as per usual, this has not placated cookers who are furious about this thing they don't understand, and this should be the fucking end of it. But the utter rubbish I watched on YouTube, God, I might put some clips in, but I probably won't. They think the tests are rigged. This is the thing. I don't get an answer I want. Oh, they tested it, and there was no 3-knot left in it. I wonder who tested it. I wonder who paid for those tests. Mate, if they found the substance in the fucking milk, they'd have to keep testing it. Anyway. So while most of this is the usual culture war nonsense, fueled by outlets like GB News and the Daily Mail, this does play on an existing vulnerability in the UK psyche that has endured the sort of the BSE or mad cow disease scandal. That was a very big deal. I used to read about it in New Scientist back when I was 15 or some shit. That's still it's not that long ago. Oh God, it was 25 years ago, I guess. Fuck, I'm getting old. Anyway, so also worth mentioning is the bizarre story of horse meat being found in supermarkets sold beef burgers and frozen lasagnas. So this is a thing, despite having this sort of fairly reasonable suspicion of industrial food processors, I get that. But it appears this is way more about dopey politics and culture wars than any kind of actual concerns over genuine safety problems in modern food supply chains, which do exist and should be fucking, looked at strongly. I mean, totally fair enough. But this is the thing that really comes unstuck. It's so evident when you watch the content online, which is more likely to make a bizarre comparison to COVID vaccines than things like the actual food supply chain issues that resulted in things like BSE and the infection or contamination of horse meat into these products. It's almost like it's not actually about the food itself. Crazy, eh? Maybe there's something else going on here. Now, the outrage has sparked here in Australia with Coles announcing they will partner with local farmers to supply their Coles Finest carbon neutral range, which currently exists through the purchase of carbon credits to offset the emissions from the flatulent animals. Fair enough. Cows burp, they fart, you buy carbon credits, you make some maths, you make an Excel spreadsheet, hope for the best, and you charge double for the meat. Lots of people, mostly in teal seats, northern beaches, eastern suburbs, they buy this shit. Cool. Everyone feels better. This thing's actually going to make a difference, though. But the great thing about this is that for some very silly reason, Coles thought it would be a good idea to announce this on Twitter, which has got them 2,700 comments, 518 retweets, and a rather unfortunate 194 likes. I reckon the first two numbers have gone up. I doubt the third one has. See, that's what people call a ratio. If you hear Twitter wankers calling about a ratio, it's that there's more angry comments, not so many love hearts. Not many likes, lots of comments, because everyone's not liking it and calling you a fuckwit. And that's exactly what was happening. And it was a lot of moaning, just that you usually unrelated to the actual shorthand, so much bullshit about fucking vaccines. And it's, of course, all blue ticks at the top of the list. And they've all got their own fucking hot take on why this is incredibly dangerous and must be stopped, and it's all fucking made up. One blue tick user said, quote, "They only trialed it for 90 days. Goodness knows what the long-term health implications will be. Not worth the risk." Now, of course, this is simply not true. It has been tested over the course of a decade in scores of peer-reviewed studies. But who do you trust? Big Agriculture or @Chardy2? I mean, who says 90 days is a problem? You don't know what the study was evaluating. What study? What 90 days? There's no details there. There's none of this shit in the fucking milk. Jesus Christ. So this is the thing that we saw with the fucking COVID vaccines. You know, it was the same shit. It wasn't tested for long enough. How did the test work? What was it testing? Was there 16 control segments? I don't know. I think the trial just should have gone longer. We should have just waited longer. No. The goalposts just keep shifting. It's 4 years on and they're still on about this shit. This is the thing. You can't ever please a paranoid cooker when they get their white coat on and start laughing as a fucking scientist. So don't bother. Just don't bother. They're also pushing the fact that the active ingredient in Bovaer could potentially damage male fertility and reproductive organs. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, not my dick. I want to eat cheese. I want my dick. Yeah, of course, this is entirely out of context and complete bullshit. It's not based on the products that come from Bovaer-fed cows, the meat and the milk we'll actually end up consuming, but the risk when inhaling the product on a farm. Are you a farmer? If yes, pay attention. If not, chill the fuck out. Now, this is the thing. You know, if you're going to consume the product itself, I don't know where the fuck you're going to get it from, but if you're going to chuck a spoon in the bag and start chowing it down, then maybe keep track of your sperm count. I don't fucking know. I just think that you've got bigger problems at that point if you've decided that is what you want to do with your life. Don't eat cow food. Don't eat cow food. And don't have sheep drench either. Yeah. No, there's lots of things you shouldn't have that are agricultural that I think cookers have. Anyway, so basically don't eat the fucking pellets or crush up the pellets and snort them. This is sound advice. If you're handling a lot of this stuff, honestly, wear a mask. This is a very reasonable thing to do. It's all on the leaflet. Even so, in order to consume the amount that it merely indicated possible reproductive issues, it would be a big dose over a long period of time. And as far as inhaling goes, it appears that the real issue is the silica in the thing that you inhale. Not so much Bovaer as such, it's just that one of the things, it's in building things and stuff like that. I mean, just don't fucking breathe it in and don't fucking eat it. Use your brain. You're not a cow, all right? Now, I apologize for anyone who enjoys the tin cracks, but I have to change my tins off camera because I don't have Jack to talk while there's no breaks. So all of this logic and all of this basic transparent public information does not stop tweets like this. Beware. Oh, this is all in caps, by the way. A side effect of Bovaer is male infertility, and it seems that Allah are complicit in the depopulation agenda. Which begs the question, why do Arla want less customers? Seems very sort of Philip Morris. Anyway, look, here's a much more sounding take, which found its way to the top of my Twitter feed about 50 times when I was looking at this. Elon Musk really wanted me to see this one. Bovaer is a new dietary supplement that allows farmers to reduce intestinal methane emissions in animals. It's the stomach, apparently. That said, according to the FDA, the active ingredient in Bovaer can harm male fertility. I wonder how seriously they took the safety tests. What does that even fucking mean? How seriously they took the safety tests? What are you talking about? So, of course, everything has a cause, and we have a furniture salesman in the House. Craig Kelly, the newly minted member of the Libertarian Party, former member of the Liberal Party, former member of the United Australia Party, former member of One Nation, has jumped on board with this, but lent some real credibility by showing a screenshot of a report by the Food Safety Commission of Japan, which did, to be honest, a rather cruel test on rats, mice, and dogs, which saw 100 milligrams per kilo of body weight administered per day to see how they fared. Now, in the Bovaer literature, they boast that just 1/4 of a teaspoon per day will reduce emissions by 30%. That is 1.42 grams of the stuff in a 50 kilogram cow. Oof. So let's look at that. So in this study that Cook is seen to love quoting out of context and completely ridiculously, that is a dose that would see someone like myself chomping down about 9 grams of the substance in an equivalent test. I'm giving away my weight there a bit. And yes, they saw a relative decrease in the weight of rat testes, how big your balls are, and a decrease in sperm count. This is worth noting, right? This is, extreme circumstance, but it's worth noting. This has not been found to be the case in cows, though, because cows aren't rats, and they're also ladies. So that's good. I don't think they're even feeding this to the bulls, whose job, I believe, I'm not a farmer, but is basically just to sexually harass cows at set times throughout the week and then be sort of caged again. I'm sure the bulls will be fine. I'm sure they'll be fine. Also, a 550 kilogram cow, God, this took me way too long, will eat about 11 kilograms of dry matter in a day, even less than the leaflet. From my calculations at the recommended dosage, that is like 660 milligrams of Bovaer, or a little over 1 milligram per kilo of body weight. Let's just call it 2 milligrams for the sake of argument. It's massive, massive blowout there. You can imagine that increasing this 50-fold, which is a massive underestimation, could have a few health issues, right? Do you see how dumb this is? It's always that thing. The dose is the poison, for fuck's sake. But the FDA and other safety bodies mention it because they mention fucking everything. Even if the risk is remote, they still mention it. Have you seen those ads on TV in the US where they walk down the beach holding each other's hand for a boner pill and they explain how it may make your heart explode, it may make your face fall off? Like, this is what happens. Any adverse reaction that may be linked to the medication, they'll mention. That's a good thing. This is based on good faith. The problem with cookers is they don't understand good faith. If anything, they exploit it. And this is why we can't have nice things in society. So in summary on that one, don't inhale Bovaer. Don't eat it on a daily basis. If you do, try not to eat too much of it. Because, look, if you're going to take Craig's word for it, he's probably right. It could be bad for your balls. I mean, he reads science, He put the science on Twitter. How can you possibly argue with that? So I will give them this, right? The risk to people handling Bovaer in an agricultural sense is non-zero. If the people handling it use basic PPE, that risk will reduce drastically. But even in the Coles promo shoot with an old farmer pouring the pellets into feed, you can see a little puff of dust coming from the packet and no mask to be seen. Mate, that's bad. Like, lead by fucking example. Put a mask on. I know it's bad optics, but dude, just that's what you should be doing. It's not that controversial to wear fucking PPE at work. Now, to be fair, the old fart probably has little use for his knackers now anyway. If he's bred, he's probably past his prime, just like an old steer. But an extra caveat here is that the amount you need to consume to experience adverse reactions is, as I said, pretty goddamn big. And the thing that I've found astonishing here, the farmers, gotta say the farmers, the cookers don't seem to give a fuck about the farmers here. They care entirely about their own milk exposure, which is completely irrelevant, doesn't pass on. The meat exposure doesn't pass on. But they don't seem to care about the safety of the farmers, only the purity of the product they're about to buy at the supermarket. I find that to be noteworthy and interesting. Now, as a general shade of it's hard to take cookers seriously when you see this sort of shit they peddle, right? Like, you like to think they know better, and there's a part of you that thinks that maybe they do know better. This more implies that they are lying and not just stupid, which is, it's an interesting place to be. But this is the issue when it comes from the other side of this, spectating and trying to debunk it. Brandolini's bullshit asymmetry rule is a bitch of a thing. It took me so long to go through this, look into it, And all they're doing is just retweeting or highlighting some out of context parts of a study that I had to fucking go through and read, and then saying, look, this is terrible, and putting complete nonsense at the top of it. This is the nature of debunking disinformation. It's so much harder than spreading bullshit. But fuck, law school's over and, work's been slow. So one of the things that is making cookers angry about this is the involvement of Bill Gates. Now, he isn't actually involved, of course, despite the countless videos and tweets and TikToks and blah, blah, blah that insist otherwise. It's fucking embarrassing. But of course, Bill Gates is all over this concept like a rash. He's trying to save the world. He believes in climate change and he's trying to mitigate it. This is a massive way of doing it. But he's backing a competing product called Ruminate. Now, one thing to know about Gates is he is a philanthropist and a capitalist and an entrepreneur. So at the end of the day, he wants the world to have less emissions. He also really wants his product to win. But he has said things like this, Bovaer has promise and things like that. But you better believe that the Bill Gates who basically destroyed Netscape is going to come out and start fucking swinging at DSM Firmtech when Ruminate gets approved. But the thing that really shits me at Ruminate is there's a number 8 instead of just the suffix ATE. And I just don't think that agtech should sound cool. Bovaer is fine. It's fine. It's not interesting. It's hard to pronounce, which is kind of funny because all the YouTube cookers are all like, oh, Bovaer, Bovaer. But Ruminate, you're not cool. So stop it. But look, Twiggy Forrest is involved in this one. He fancies himself as a bit of a philanthropist in this sort of regard. I guess if you're going to be a mining magnate, you may as well, find ways to mitigate your harm. Good on you, Twig. So Ruminate is a Perth-based startup that is using existing CSIRO research on seaweed to isolate the active ingredient in the seaweed and sell it as a supplement. It does the same thing, basically. Ruminate is in the testing phase. It's probably quite promising, as Bill Gates would say, whereas Bovaer has beat them to it by being thoroughly tested for over a decade and is basically, it is ready to be implemented into the supply chain. It apparently already is, according to Isla Foods. And this is, of course, in spite of what weird, maladjusted British boomers are saying on YouTube. And I tell you what, they're real fucking dumb. It's just been listening to that stuff. I'm not paid enough. So farmers who are part of the Isla Foods cooperative are worried about the backlash. But this is great. They are also quite hilariously thinking that it's like cookers will be fine with Bovaer. It's just that they're angry about the Gates link. So Farmers Weekly reported this. Dairy farmers who have directly contacted Farmers Weekly amid concern said the backlash had been caused by confusion between the Isla trial and the one being funded by Microsoft founder Bill Gates using a different product. Off the mark there, guys. Isla also made this point in its statement to Farmers Weekly, which they said, the information spreading online surrounding our link to Bill Gates and the safety of the Bovaer feed additive is completely false, which is being circulated around a lot, including the GB News video I saw. So while idiots have made this mistake, and they show no real signs of self-correcting despite readily available evidence, they're not suddenly about to embrace this product because it's not running Windows. I mean, come on. Like, they still think that it's unnatural, evil, and it's mitigating climate change. So it's got to be farcical, right? I mean, this is the thing. They hate it because they automatically hate anything that mitigates climate impact, and they especially hate things they don't understand. So you've got a real twofer here. They hate things they're told to hate by the climate lobby because they package it into conspiratorial thinking, and they get that dopamine rush of believing they're across something that normies don't know. Trust me, I know that feeling. I used to like it a lot. And they really don't seem to be grasping the realities of this substance very effectively, either blatantly quoting misinformation, just like Craig Kelly is, about the product or about the use of the product, or just being too stupid to read what they're posting. Like, often they contradict themselves in their own content, but no one blinks because cognitive dissonance is a fucking bitch. Now, on a total tangent, hilariously enough, lesser villainized, surprisingly, and far more evil, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos donated $9.4 million to a project at Surrey's Pirbright Institute that aims to reduce the methane produced by cows by means of a vaccination. Now, if cookers find out about that, they're going to be furious. They hate vaccines. They hate climate mitigation. Oof, this is a big deal. Now, it will come as no surprise that they are also desperate to link this to the World Economic Forum. It's hard to get a drinks break in this script. But generally speaking, the only actual link in that, WEF released a video on the supplement a few years ago. That's it. There's just they release social media videos on heaps of shit. I listened to their podcast and stuff. I haven't heard a mention of it. And people should listen to their podcast. They're really interesting. These are people who they have their finger on the pulse of what technological innovation is doing, what governments are trying to do. It's a bit of like a looking glass into the future, or a peek into a conspiratorial universe. You fucking decide, whatever. So one tweet links Bovaer to the World Economic Forum with this, quote, Bovaer stems from the Netherlands, the country which is a, quote, food innovation hub for the World Economic Forum. So apparently everything from the Netherlands is now part of a World Economic Forum plot because they have farms or food innovation hubs. Cool. Okay, good. The CEO of DSM Firmenich, the Dutch-Swiss company behind Bovaer, is Dimitri de Vries. And he has been to Davos for the World Economic Forum summit there. Totally normal for CEOs of large companies, especially ones who are desperately trying to cash in on climate mitigation strategies. This isn't a conspiracy, guys. This is capitalism. It is a business trying to make money, and going to Davos is how you get it. Duh. So in the face of the consumer boycott, smaller UK dairy farms have taken to social media, mostly Twitter it seems, unsurprisingly, to flaunt the fact that they will not be using Bovaer in their feed. Well done, you. You're probably not A, able to access it, B, eligible for the carbon credit scheme. Like, who gives a fuck? But of course, due to the size of the cooker industrial complex in the UK fueled by GB News, a right-wing media outlet owned by a sketchy Dubai-based firm Legatum Holdings, look it up, this is likely to be fairly significant. I mean, they're going to pummel this shit home. I'm sure the right-wing media machine in the US will do their job too, assuming that RFK Jr. doesn't just ban it on day one, which is such a busy day. You got to do fluoride. You got to get rid of Fruit Loops. You got corn. Oh, so busy. Oh, what do you do on the second day? Rest, I suppose. So Australian companies have jumped on the bandwagon to separate themselves from the product, including this announcement from Norco that was 1 hour old at the time of writing on 3rd of December, but is now a little older. This script has taken a while for me to write. Starting bit is official statement. Bovaer is not used on Norco dairy farms. We can confirm that Norco dairy farmers do not use the feed additive Bovaer. At Norco, we pride ourselves on making quality, natural dairy products. Product quality and safety is critically important to our 100% farmer-owned cooperative. We can assure our customers that all Norco products are safe to consume and that they can continue to buy Norco dairy with confidence. Oof, okay. Well, safe to consume. That's good. Don't fuck up then. And if you're wondering why Norco is so quick off the mark, and of course why they're called Norco, there's this from their website. Quote, established in Byron Bay, New South Wales in 1895, Norco is a 100% Australian farmer-owned dairy cooperative with 326 active members on 190 dairy farms in northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland. Cooker Central. But before you start pouring your fucking Norco down the drain, they're a dairy cooperative. It's farmers. If you knew the politics of the farmers that you bought your food from, you would never eat again. So don't worry about it. Just drink the goddamn milk. And if Norco is what you choose to drink, or, you know, if you think their chocolate milk is a good variety, yeah, I'm watching the Facebook group, then just fucking drink it. It's fine. Just trust me. You don't want to get to a point where you actually start microanalyzing the beliefs of people you buy things from, because most of them are cunts. So I actually posted a very silly response on their Facebook page trying to highlight the fact that they're globalists themselves who are using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is a massive cooker boogeyman, to pursue their environmental goals. But everyone just thought I was a cooker. It was quite funny, and Norco liked the post. I wouldn't have liked the post. It was not a good thing to like. It was really literary trash. So Cleaver's Organic Meat came out with a similar statement a day earlier. Fair enough, kind of obvious considering they sell an organic product. They're not going to use it because they kind of can't, I suppose. May as well, make hay while the sun shines, pardon the pun. But Bass River Dairies have taken to using the term full fart milk proudly declaring they don't use the additive. Well done. This is the more immature approach. I think we'll be expecting to see when people are really trying to properly pander to cookers, who of course just want to use this as a way to ridicule the idea of climate change mitigation strategies as a concept. I would say that the one we're going to hear the most of is going to be this immature approach. That'll be the prevalent one. Now, the fact that you can see half of the posts on Bovaer feature anger toward Bill Gates. This shows how incredibly dopey this backlash is. Of course, he doesn't have anything to do with the product. The best thing they can come up with is basically the smaller testicles on rats at doses at least 50 times above what is being used on a completely different animal, and you're not meant to be eating it. The second worst thing is that it's bad if you inhale it. Okay, fine. It's not a problem. Well, that's the best evidence of harm they have that's vaguely rooted in reality. Of course, they're going to go extra because they have nothing else. One idiot on the Reddit forum R-Conspiracy suggested this, quote, Bill Gates is trialling Bovaer in Tesco, Aldi and Morrison's milk to cover for a milk-based mRNA delivery system. They plan to get every unvaccinated person. So, what do you do with that? What do you fucking do with that? So many of the sort of cooked takes on this say something dopey like, oh, they say this is safe, but they said that about the vaccine. It's like, well, yeah, billions of doses. And apparently 12 people who have dead, but no one else does. That really does back up the idea that it's not Bovaer, it's not the COVID vaccine, but anti-vaxxer proximity syndrome is real, and people need to be very fucking careful with it. All right, drinks break. So they still think the vaccine is going to kill us all. It's been 4 years now. I've had 6 jabs and I'm fine, even though 2 of them were Novavax, to be fair, which I guess is the cooker jab of choice, and also awesome, no side effects. I fully endorse it. But this is insane. Move on, guys. I mean, it's not even good content. But the sad thing is it seems to work because it's all over YouTube. Fucking idiots on GB News rattling on about vaccines. Mate, why? It's so reductive. It's not about vaccines. It's about Bovaer. It's a shit false equivalence. So after going down this rabbit hole, it would appear that this is yet another dead shit culture war, which isn't even being propelled by junk science. The science itself is fine, but as usual, idiots like Craig Kelly weaponize it by highlighting certain things, hoping no one else reads the rest of it, decontextualizing the fuck out of it, and making it seem scary. And at the end of the day, climate change is real, and, sorry vegan listeners, steak is awesome. Milk is kind of shit on its own, but it makes cool stuff like cheese and sour cream. So I'm definitely all about dairy. If it's a choice between the climate and cows, we should probably choose the climate. And I say this as someone who believes in climate change, but is also inherently selfish, just like the fucking rest of us. Don't pretend like you're not the same. But what if we don't need to make that choice? That would be pretty rad. Welcome to the fucking present future, guys. So if we can lower emissions from cattle and prevent Klaus Schwab from making us, and by us I mean people in developing countries, we're not eating bugs. We just don't need to do that. We're just there. Poor people will. We're going to keep eating steak. We'll throw red meat in the bin like we do now, which is fucking pathetic. But if in theory at least, this prevents us from having to eat bugs and mitigate our impact and mitigate our impact on the climate through red meat, fuck it, man. Throw that Bovaer in that feedlot because I love red meat. So once there's a new thing to be angry about, just something that might improve the planet, it needs to move on to that. There will be something else that's going to piss them off for reasons that only matter to vested interests in probably the fossil fuel industry. But when it comes to the companies that so far refuse to use the additive, oh man, once those sweet, sweet carbon credits start rolling around, they might just start quietly throwing it in. And for better or worse, if the labeling laws stay the same, we won't even really know. But this is just business as usual, and I just fail to see the problem here. It has been a while since we've had any Cooker lawsuits, but we have a fresh contender for one of the worst attempts to litigate a claim for damages from the pandemic since, I guess, the last one. I don't fucking know. But it really was. It was very bad. I did watch a fair bit of the interlocutory hearing on Monday, which was basically an application from the government to have the matter dismissed. It was streamed live on YouTube, and a lot of this we're borrowing from the fine work of vexatious litigant, as usual, always do. Thank you for bailing us out and making this work. So basically, in a nutshell, the statement of claim, the sort of legal document that outlines their submission and argument, was a gish gallop of anti-vax bullshit. The judge was having absolutely none of it. The hearing was to assess whether it had any real merit before sort of wasting the court's time by proceeding to a trial. Now, I'm going to have a drink before saying this because this is some law school bullshit. So as a side note, courts love not being in court. If there's like a mediation or a settlement or basically anything to avoid going through the painful motions of an actual court case, they love it. Court costs money. It's annoying as shit. This whole mitigation thing, it's even legislated. There's laws on this. There's like paramount duties to the court. There's all this sort of stuff. I can't remember. I think I've got a distinction in it though. This is why Monica got her ass handed to her with the whole Calderbank offer thing. Because if you get an offer of settlement and you refuse it, only to later get a smaller offer, that whole paying cost thing, it's a savage thing, but it makes the litigation basically gambling. So someone gives you a settlement offer and you think to yourself, shit, if I say no to this, I could be up for the costs because I could end this right now. I could end this right now by taking this reasonable offer. And I mean, look, it's probably as good as it's going to get. Now, you could wind up never knowing you could have been a multimillionaire as a result. But as Monica found out, if they give you an offer that they've calculated quite carefully and it turns out to be more than what you end up getting, you're going to get real fucked. So this is the thing. Once again, being in court sucks and it costs money. It costs the plaintiff, it costs the defendant, but it costs the state. And we only have finite resources. There aren't that many smart people. And judges are really smart. I know a few. They're clever. So while Monica wanted her sort of day in court, and by that I mean her moment in the sun to make content and be a fucking pest, the court just wanted to be doing something more interesting, more contentious, more genuinely useful. So the government wants to, in their respectful submission, just have a laugh at this thing and call it a day. I'm paraphrasing this and I'm definitely inserting my words here. Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm not sure. This isn't like to save their bacon from this suit. It's just because this is a big dumb waste of time. They're not offering money. They're just saying, look, this is just like we are legally obligated. We have an obligation to the court. We have a paramount duty to the court to call out this bullshit proceeding and just try and prevent everyone from having to go through the expensive and silly process of litigating it. So before we go into the hilarious proceedings, and they were hilarious, this interlocutory hearing was so brutal, a bit of backstory. The COVID class action is led by Dr. Melissa McCann, who was a GP in the Whitsundays. I say was because she now does not appear on the clinic website. I'm not sure if she's still practicing or not. She's also apparently a cosmetic doctor, so maybe she does injectables. I don't know. Maybe she does like nip tucks. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what this is. This is all cursory Google search stuff. I don't know. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on her. But what I can say is that she has made herself the litigation funder, which means that she will be taking on the costs if the case fails. And this is a massive distinguishing point from the usual practice of anti-vax lawsuits, who expose the plaintiffs on the case to being liable for the inevitable cost sort of when they lose, while the lawyer fundraiser just keeps the money. So, in this instance, these plaintiffs are not being sacrificed for the cause, and respect for that. And I say this genuinely. Apparently, McCann has put $100,000 of her own money into the kitty. I don't know what her financial situation is, but what I can say is that it doesn't appear like she's still practicing medicine. So maybe that $100,000 is maybe quite consequential to her. We can say what we like at McCann. You can go crazy on that, but I will say right now, from what I can see, she's not a grifter. Feel free to prove me wrong. Send me a message, email, theconditionalreleaseprogram@gmail.com. But she's got real skin in this game now, and she's pushing for it to go to trial. She really wants this litigated, even though it's not going well. And as far as I can see, outside of internet clout, she really doesn't have too much to gain. Like, this is going to ruin her career. So the fundraiser got around $559,800. I'm not sure. This is it's a website. So this is of a $650,000 goal. And this is from 1,041 donors. That's a pretty big average donation if you look at it. I mean, like, 500 a piece, right? Apparently there's some big ones, and she's a big one as well. This is according to their No More Silence website, which is in caps for reasons. And that's a decent war chest. It's a decent amount of money for litigating the thing, for costs. There is a breakdown of costs on the website. They're all very transparent about it. I didn't go into that too much because honestly, this took me so long already. But as the judge said, I mean, unfortunately, it would take about a year to actually understand the statement of claim and defend it. Like, it's an absolute nightmare to read. And I know anti-vax gibberish. So the cost order will be huge if they lose. Some poor idiot from the AGS is going to have to learn about every anti-vax trope on the internet. Oh, man, that sucks. So there are 3 lead plaintiffs, and this is from OzDoc. Quote, the 3 lead plaintiffs include a 46-year-old who alleges he was left with severe cognitive impairment, chest pain, headaches, and shortness of breath after 1 dose of an mRNA vaccine. Another patient, a 65-year-old, claims a single dose of Vaxzevria, which I think is the AstraZeneca one, caused him acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, lower leg numbness and weakness, and neurogenic bladder and bowel. Now, I'll give you a side note here. I looked at that and I thought, oh, fuck, what's going on here? Encephalomyelitis thing is something to do with brains. But the neurogenic bladder and bowel thing, this is wildly vague. So I was wondering, what's happened to his bladder and bowel? It's kind of like incontinence, and it's caused by a whole host of things. It's apparently related to damage to the central nervous system, but what I could find online was very, very vague, which is tricky because, I mean, they're meant to be able to prove causation, right? I don't know, mate. This is not looking good. The third individual, age 41, alleges they experienced myopericarditis. We've heard that one before. I thought it was myo or peri. Anyway, requiring pericardectomy after a single dose of an mRNA vaccine, and now has PTSD. Oh, wow. Steroid-induced diabetes and chest wall numbness. PTSD. Oof, that's strong. So there are apparently 1,800 members of the class action. These are the lead plaintiffs. This does include people who have been genuinely impacted by adverse reactions. We need to be mindful of that, I think, when analysing this. You may have heard of, if you haven't, now's your time, 34-year-old comedian and performer Katie Lees is being represented by her father in the suit. She died from, I think his name is Ian. She died from complications due to the AstraZeneca jab. And that's no one's arguing that. Like, that just is it. And the situation was handled fucking terribly. If you hear the story, it's heartbreaking. It feels very fucking avoidable. They have since appealed to the media to basically demonstrate the response to her death was bloody terrible. They have, I believe, made a fundraiser. I'm sorry, I'm going off script here, but I believe they've got a charitable organisation of sorts to assist the performing arts in the inner west. Either way, one thing they maintain is they're not anti-vaxxers. They're not anti-vaxxers. It's just that they did the right thing and the wrong thing happened, and that sucks. And we are not having a go at these people. There is a massive line between your general cooker screaming for attention, looking for a payout maybe, and generally saying, oh, I got the flu and now I was with the vaccine. No, just shut up. There are very, very clear lines, but there's also very blurry ones because the COVID vaccine compensation scheme is a series of bullshit technicalities. And it is so, I don't want this to be a libel because, I can't really say this, but I'm going to say it with that context because I feel like that magic subset get out of jail free card erases me of any liabilities. I feel like it was designed to prevent people from getting compensation. It's got bullshit technicalities in it. In general, the benefit of the doubt should be given to people who had a bit of a shit time after the jab. I mean, just give them a fucking payout. Like, the jab wasn't mandatory in, like, the pin you down and jab you sentence, right? Like, the story cookers often like to make up about wild nurses trying to tie down ferals in the northern rivers and pump them full of vaccines, God knows what. But avoiding it had real-world consequences. You might have lost your job, you couldn't go to the pub, blah, blah, blah. You all remember the fucking thing, right? If you're going to run a program like that, pay people who have a bad time. Simple. If you're not sure, just fucking pay them. It's not a big deal. The scheme had these silly requirements, like having to prove that your adverse reaction cost either $1,000 in lost income or medical expenses, and you had to have been admitted to hospital. Despite, if you've been to hospital, you go there, you wait hours in emergency, the nurse goes in, checks your bloods, checks your ECG, and then basically says, you're fine, go home. Especially if you say, oh, this was a vaccine. They'll probably sit there and go, piss off, idiot, fuck off. Now, at the end of the day, that lack of admission to hospital where you didn't spend a night in bed, and who fucking spends a night in bed unless they've been cut open, you don't get your compo. What the fuck? These are things that are so outside of your control unless you can influence them, like you have private healthcare, or you kick and moan and scream and do something insane to get admitted into a bed. This is the stuff that should not dictate whether you had a shit time in the wake of your jab or not, whether it's causative or not. I strongly believe that compo in situations like this should be balance of probabilities, benefit of the doubt. That's not the case here. And it's got dumb shit. But that's not what they're suing for. They're suing for this idea of a duty of care that has a negligence component, misfeasance, knowing that the vaccine didn't do what it was meant to do, knowing all these harms. There's 1,000 pages of it. You can look if you want. But in the actual compensation scheme, there's a narrow list of 10 eligible conditions, which does not include conditions like chronic urticaria, something I didn't know about until relatively recently. I think it was maybe 8 months ago. That is specifically listed as a harm not covered by the scheme, and that is bullshit. And the reason why I know this is because someone who I have worked with told me about an adverse reaction they had to the vaccine where they're continually having these flare-ups of this urticaria. And I said, mate, get on the compensation scheme, get some money for this. Like, shit, I got money for getting the jab. I got money for getting COVID. This person's getting nothing for getting sick. That is bullshit. Pay the fuck up. But unfortunately, what they're doing in this class action, as usual, when it comes to cookers getting involved in legal things, completely fucking misguided and a real shame. So look, to put it in perspective, a bit of compo is a fraction of what we spent on PPE that is expired and just went into the fucking bin anyway. A fraction of what we spent out bailing out dodgy businesses who are probably double dipping in the NDIS. The scheme has closed in late 2024. I think it was like October, and paid out around $32 million for 4,941 claims. And that sounds like a lot, but there's also another 1057 to be processed. And that number, the 4941 and the 1057, doesn't include my mate, who was told specifically that her condition, her autoimmune condition that appeared to be triggered by the vaccine, is not going to be covered. And then you've got the fact that, generally speaking, with all the indemnities and all the blah blahs around vaccines, which is the only way how vaccine programs work, because otherwise that'd be a fucking nightmare, most OECD countries have a vaccine compensation scheme in place for basically all adverse reactions for whatever you get jabbed with. We don't. And why that is, that needs to be fucking worked on, I think. And you know, I will fully support that. Compo is good. If you give me a measles jab and I suddenly have a fucking problem, mate, write me a check. I took that measles jab so your bloody kids wouldn't get fucking sterilized, all right? So I would say this class action should not be necessary, but here we are. But we can't say that definitively because I don't know whether these lead plaintiffs or any of these 1,900 people have a legit claim. I don't fucking know. You've seen cookers jump up and down, vaccine reaction, this. Anti-vaxxer proximity syndrome is one of the leading causes of death these days because you know that every fucking anti-vaxxer knows 19 or 20 people who have died from vaccine injuries. That's a lot of people you know who've died, and I'm surprised you have that many friends. So I need a drink after that. So let's not dwell on this whole, justice for anti-vaxxers thing because you're not here for me to stick up for anti-vaxxers. So let's jump into the actual proceedings, which were really, really funny. There might be a few drinks breaks in this one. The first hint that things were not going well was when the judge said, quote, "The way this case has been prepared is calculated to aggravate even the most patient of judges." Wow. And when they attempted to hand the judge a glossary, which I'm guessing would have maybe clarified some of these issues, oh God, would have clarified some of these issues. Her Honour said, quote, "That is almost as useless as the document that was handed to me when I asked for glossary. Don't need another copy of another useless document." So when I saw Vaxi post this, I was like, I have to tune in. So Vaxi sent a link and, oh man, it did not get better. It did not get better at all. It was so hard to watch. So this would be a lot more understandable if this is their first crack at it, right? But it's not their first crack at it. It appears the statement of claim has been amended 4 times. I think SBS said that it was 6 times. I only found 4. So maybe they're right. Maybe they're better legal researchers than I am, but I only found 4. I'm giving the benefit of that doubt. The Australian government solicitor put it like this in their submission, which states, on 7th May 2024, the applicants filed the 3rd further amended statement of claim, 3FA SOC. The 3FA SOC comprises of 189 pages accompanied by and making extensive reference to 7 schedules, brackets, 629 pages. The 3FA SOC is in many respects ambiguous, prolix, don't know that word, and difficult to understand. The applicants also filed a concise statement. While it is considerably shorter, it suffers from much the same defects as the 3FA SOC. So in court, the barrister from the government said this: "In our respectful submission, the pleading in its current form is just not capable of advancing to a final hearing in this court. There are allegations of the most serious..." These are individual quotes I've nicked from the media, mind you, because you can't record, and I wasn't watching this bit. "These are allegations of the most serious kind, and they are expressed in no more than a generalized conclusion. It is really a series of bold assertions and propositions that are expressed at a very high level of generality. In effect, the members of the representative group in this proceeding are the whole of the Australian population." Which, of course, that last bit was jumped on in McCann's Substack, which is an interesting one because it's like, that's not a good thing. That's saying it's generalized. Generalized is bad for torts. You don't want to have a generalization. You need to have a specific amount of people who have standing, not just the entire country. That makes you not have a case. But anyway, she should really consult her lawyers before she makes a Substack post. Anyway, don't care. So having a bit of a scroll through the almost 1,000 pages of this wonderful document, you will find broken hyperlinks to the ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network, which is an anti-vax group run by Del Bigtree. Cool. So his page is referenced twice there. The studies found the ICANN page can actually be accessed elsewhere, but you can imagine why they were linked to ICANN, because that's where they found them. I've spent some time looking at this document because I'm committed to the cause and I love you guys, but I also can't be fucked scrolling through the whole thing. It's so big. The judge said, join the Patreon so I can quit my job and actually do this properly. But I did some searching, and funnily enough, in response to the judge saying the pleadings would take a year to comprehend, McCann suggested on Substack that they need to learn how to use Control F and read things digitally. Oh man, you are trying to teach a fucking judge on Discovery? Oh bro. This thing is a monster and it fucking lays eggs. Because you know what cookers are like, right? They lay eggs of cooker bullshit. Like this one, for example. A search for the term Substack brings back 8 results, which includes mega brain tech genius Steve Kirsch. You know what he's like. This goes on to articles that misinterpret data, do the usual delusional Kirsch thing. Imagine the fucking bullshit asymmetry principle being applied to the fucking Australian government solicitor to try and figure out what the fuck their argument is based on looking at Steve Kirsch's Substack. I reckon they'd palm it off to some poor grad at Hall & Wilcox, and McCann would just have to eat the invoice. That's not a good outcome for anyone. I don't support that, but this is kind of what you're asking for, guys. But I wasn't done with Control F. I didn't find Children's Self Defense. I didn't find RFK. But YouTube, 6 hits. To their credit, this is mostly of the respondent John Skerritt making public statements, but still, bro, it's a legal document, man. Like, transcribe that shit. Or like YouTube and like 1 hit for BitChute. Like, you couldn't find it anywhere but BitChute. BitChute is not a good source. So her Honour said of the document, quote, "For anyone to get across this statement of claim properly, it would take the best part of a year devoted to that exercise and nothing else." And the barrister replied something like, because I couldn't record it, "Well, it took me a week." And I don't know if that was the best thing to say, but I don't know if the barrister was that worried. Anyway, So Her Honour also said about the finding specific alleged instances of negligence and malfeasance, which they're trying to, sort of prove here, was, quote, trying to find a needle in a haystack. So if you're trying to make a claim, you don't want your claim to be a needle in a haystack. If it's a legal claim, you want your claim to be a obvious thing in an obvious stack. And it really was, man. It was reading, it's just a torrent of anti-vax bullshit. And given enough time, if you want to look into it, you'll find that a lot of it's false, misleading, silly. You're all so across the brief. It's been fucking years now. They also had this excellent exchange about the statement of claim, which has been amended, as I say, I think 4 times now. Judge says, well, Her Honour says, it's very difficult to understand, I have to say. And the barrister responds with, well, it's not perfect, Your Honour. And Her Honour says, not perfect is an understatement. Now, in order to save face and possibly the instructing solicitor's practicing certificate, I don't know, the respondent said, and this is the government, quote, I invite my learned friend to reconsider whether he wants this document to even be provided to the court and to appear on the public record. And the judge continued with, I am not receiving the document. I think that is the only sensible thing to do. That's bad. Oh, that's so bad. So going through my memory, like I say, can't record it. The barrister got really flustered and said something like, that is a terrible question, to something the judge said. You don't tell a judge that it's a terrible question. It's just I haven't even litigated before. He's a SC. Anyway, she said at one point, don't shout at me, quote. This was such a complete train wreck. If the judge is saying don't shout at me, you are fucked. And I've seen, like Vaxie said, but also like I've looked around, the barrister is apparently quite well regarded, has represented anti-vaxxers before, but he was really served a shit sandwich here, But still, from memory, he didn't really behave in a way that I would expect of someone in his position in the legal fraternity. I was a little bit surprised. I watched litigation in this space out of curiosity, but also to learn. And I don't feel like I learned good lessons from this man in his performance. Anyway, so let's just go back to the statement of claim because that's where the fun is. Here's an example from page 194 of 992 pages. This is one element that claims the respondent knew prior to approving the Pfizer vaccine for children the clinical efficacy of the vaccine was not 90.7% as claimed, because 98.9% of the unvaccinated group did not develop COVID infection and 99.9% of the vaccine group did not develop infection. Okay, so I'm gonna have a drink and we're gonna decipher this. If you look at this, we've got 99.9% of vaccinated people compared to 98.9% of unvaccinated people. If you look at that in absolute risk reduction terms, that is 1%. Now, I deciphered this when I was reading this shit document, but today when I was doing a workout routine, I chucked on YouTube and my God, she actually mentioned it. McCann mentioned this in a YouTube clip as a bit of a flex, which I found astonishing. I really thought this was a footnote on the class action, but apparently it's quite a major point. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a statistician. Outside of my mate Tom Ellis and a few minor exceptions, I think most scientists are massive fucking dogs. So I cheated. I put this into an AI model. And apparently this is basically just trying to use a smaller number. So, see, 1% sounds smaller than 90.7%. So the 1% figure is the absolute risk reduction. Take the two numbers, subtract the placebo from the vaccine group, and you get you 1%. Not so impressive now, Mr. Skerritt, or probably Dr. Skerritt, I don't know. But if you do this as a relative risk reduction, you know, the difference between the vaccinated kids and the unvaccinated kids, then you get your sweet 90.7 figure. So, like, personally, when I had my informed consent around the jab, I didn't want to know what fucking society was doing. I wanted to know how much better off I was after the jab than before compared to people who hadn't had the jab. Not the chance of me having a shit time after being, you know, sneezed on by a removalist if it was in a group of 1,000, because it was a group of 1. And yes, that's how I fucking got COVID in New Year's 2021. And yeah, I mean, like, you know, when it comes down to it, I don't want to see statistics. I want it to be relative. Sure, we can agree to disagree with McCann on that one. Now, this is already a pretty ridiculous thing to put in this statement of claim. It's pedantic anti-vax nonsense, probably came from Steve Kirsch. Both numbers mean the same fucking thing. That's what I punched into AI to find out. And the best part, none of the applicants, well, the lead plaintiffs, are children. Why are they fucking like this? What is the point of this? Like, are they trying to now do this based on some kids who are in this class action? And in doing that, like, what does it fucking prove? Like, you're trying to get damages for vaccine injuries. And there's this idea that they knew that the vaccine wasn't effective, but the reason why it wasn't effective was a mathematical trick that simply says the exact same thing with a different number. I feel the judge. I feel the judge who probably did a similar thing to me, found a part of the pleadings, sussed it out, and just went, mate, if the rest is like this, get fucked. Just get fucked. Because this was a random thing I plucked out of the doc. I plucked it out. I scrolled down and I was like, okay, I'm going to fuck with this and see what it does. And it just appears that the usual thing that cookers do, this is the legal strategy of bamboozling the court, has failed. What a surprise. Judges don't like having people try to bamboozle them. And the judge just refused to even entertain the document, just hasn't even accepted it. And mostly because when it comes to lawyers, if you write a shit case, that can come back and bite you. And that's why before it was like, look, are you sure you want to submit this? Because you might be talked to later about from the Law Society or whatever the fucking Queensland one is. So, look, to give you an idea of the judge, before we start looking at deep state actors and all the things, Katzman appears to be a good judge. And Katzman does not pull punches when it comes to fucking with Big Pharma. So she's got form doing medical shit. Not pandering to Big Pharma, not laying down in their wake. In the class action against Johnson & Johnson, you may or may not have heard of, for a vaginal mesh disaster, Her Honor just slapped the shit out of everyone involved. There was a $300 million settlement that was reached as a result. And just, this is from a Conversation article, quote, Justice Katzman ruled the company hadn't fully researched these products, which carried significant risks, was motivated by commercial factors, and failed to give doctors or patients adequate safety information. And she found that, quote, at all relevant times, all the Ethicon devices had a defect. All such times, all the devices were also unfit for purpose for which they were required. Quote, all the devices carried risks of complications against which no adequate warnings were given. And this is what the anti-vaxxers want in this case. They have not brought the argument. All they've done is put this giant statement of claim and backed it up with, quite admittedly, a lot of legitimate sources, but also Steve fucking Kirsch. And from the conversation, Justice Katzman also criticised the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, of course, for approving the use of the devices in Australia without conducting its own checks, but rather on the basis of its approval for use in the European Union. This explains a lot. So I'll give you a bit of a metaphor here, or an analogy, or allegory, or fuck, whatever you want to call it. So this kind of explains why I was put on a dose investigation trial in Australia for Cagrasema, despite it having been done all over the world with such great success and general safety and blah, blah, blah. If you look at the situation here, you certainly aren't going to be saying, well, look, we got FDA. Hey, look, we got the EU, because you can't rely on that. If you rely on that, oh man, Justice Katzman might serve your ass for breakfast. I very much enjoyed doing the clinical trial. I lost a bunch of weight, which is fantastic. I got a lot of medical tests. A lot of them were really silly. They even called me back a few times for a few pathology results that fucked up. They thought my potassium may be in a level that required immediate emergency hospital response, but it was actually just because they fucked up the blood draw. And another one, I can't remember the other thing, but they were shitting themselves about as well. Otherwise, I'm in fucking great health. And you know how I know that? Because they want to know that. And clinical trials are fucking great. I'm not saying here that you should do this, but what ends up happening is the clinical trials you do in the US will be one of those things where they sort of drag you off the streets of San Francisco and poke you with needles and see if you die. Once that's done, then you have tests like in Australia where it's dose investigation, really basic shit, just to appease the TGA. And you can see why, because if they don't, they might get fucked. You get tested so much. It is so good. I've had MRIs. My sister had brain cancer. I feel much more reassured with the fact they came up blank. So I'm not here spruiking the clinical trial industry, but I also am saying that my experience of the clinical trial industry with vaccines, weight loss drugs, and God knows what I'll do next has been great, because I know that my health is good. And I'm constantly fucking monitored to an absurd extent. And hey, I lost 15 kilos. Maybe it's more like 12 now, but that's fine. I've eaten some wings and it was great. Also, this is not medical advice or life advice or financial advice or any kind of advice. Don't listen to me. So at the end of the day, Her Honour let the barrister for the applicant, Mark Robinson SC, who people are saying is a KC. It says SC on his website. I think anti-vaxxers is saying, is it KC? I don't know. Just kind of have a crack at making sense of things before Her Honour was due to leave at 4:15 p.m. To paraphrase the government, basically, and I mean, I'm paraphrasing very hard here, they basically said, look, Your Honour, mate, our submissions outline why this is done. Gov a read, I'll see you later. But if you want to give this bloke a shot, sort of digging upwards, be my guest, because his submission's shit. But he might be able to fix it, just by having a chat. Can we just not come here tomorrow, though? Because that would be shit and there's no real point. And that's sort of what happened. He tried to dig upwards. Nothing really came of it. He's a talented legal practitioner, but he's had nothing to work with. And he'd spent a week, admittedly, on something that the judge, quite rightly, knows takes about a year to understand. If you'd listen to our podcast, you'd have way more insights into this. Now, since then, the judge has called upon the parties to file further documents. Now, Vaxi reckons that means a decision will be coming around February 2025. I would imagine the applicants are not feeling wildly confident after showing that day, although Melissa McCann's Substack shows a real propensity toward wanting to go to trial. And I'm not sure why, because she's not Monica. She's not a clout chaser. This is going to cost her a fortune. She's so much better off being able to give partial refunds to people and just call it a day. And let's face it, if it does go to trial, some poor associate has a lot of bedtime reading for the judge and the Australian government solicitor. I mean, what a brutal thing to have to do. You don't want to pull the straw on that one. So that's why the respondents basically want this thing dismissed, due to there being no chance of success. But they also want to have security for costs in case it does continue, because if you're going to continue on, you've got to say, mate, put the money in trust, because otherwise we're not going to spend the money. If I don't know you can afford it, they should know you can afford it because you've got the fundraiser. It's a fairly modest sum, I think, $312,000, considering how much work it's going to take to look through the ridiculous statement of claim and decipher the cooker nonsense in it. That seems low. I would say basically because they're charging in sort of in-house rates, Australian government solicitor rates for the time spent. I don't know. I don't know this. Because that's not a lot. That's Monica money. In the grand scheme of a 1,000-page statement of claim, I would have thought it'd be more like $1 million. I feel for them, though, because while this document deserves to be thrown in the bin, it would have been so much work. It was just a lot of work scrolling through it and watching it fly by my eyes and looking at the keywords. But also, the solicitor up there at NR Barbie actually seems like a good person. I'm not going to name her. You can Google these details. That's fine. I don't want to get personal on this. But as far as a legal shop goes, they seem like really good people, nice Google reviews. They don't seem like they're fake anti-vaxxer reviews. I just think the cookers fucking ruin everything. And I'm not saying this is specifically Melissa McCann being a wrecking ball and a shithead. I just think that they just tend to get carried away in their own bullshit. And that's sort of what the statement of claim shows. It's someone who's got really carried away in their own bullshit. I don't think that anyone's going to find a sense of justice from this, whether they deserve it or not, because the lead plaintiffs and the rest of the people in the class action may very well have suffered. And I believe one of the people in the class action is someone who chose, this is someone who's been speaking to the media, chose to take this class action over the vaccine compensation scheme. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was as a result of being hamstrung by some arbitrary, shitty barrier that they couldn't overcome. I would just say, and this is in my unlearned opinion, if they'd spent more time making a legal case and less time trying to flood the zone with anti-vax shit, it may not have pissed off the judge so much. I'd say they'd probably still have a shitty chance, but they just can't help themselves. And this is the thing. They're so used to this on the internet. They do the usual thing of just overwhelming the person with nonsense, hoping that it makes them look like they've got a point. Because let's face it, it's kind of what worked on them. So, I mean, they're doing the same thing. It's perpetuating abuse, I suppose. And that's sort of how I would see this class action. I think it's a tragedy that it exists. I think that McCann is doing it for the right reasons the wrong way, and she's going to suffer in a way that gives me no bloody satisfaction. Other things that we're going to deal with later, and I want to do these with Jack, is that the fire ants thing. Now, it's been brought to my attention by a few people, and I must say my first thought was, okay, tricky tritties involved in this. This is fucking dumb. There's bees involved. Okay, this is fucking dumb. And then I had a look, and I checked out some Reddit threads where some people spoke, of course anecdotally, but with some sort of, some information. There's a lot going on here. I'm not ready to pull the punches yet, because I think there might be more to this story than it appears. What I will say is that generally speaking, it sounds like there's a lot of bullshit, and it's very hard to distinguish between what is bullshit or not. There's a lot of emotional appeals due to the ideas of pets being harmed. There is a vet in the area who said that the vet visits and inquiries have gone up a lot since the eradication program has begun. So these are things that I don't want to rule out, because when it comes to this vet, I had a look and I can't see any reason to say he's a cooker. If animals are being poisoned on farms, if drones are dropping baits in ways that are compromising ecosystems in certain ways, that is a conversation that's fair enough to be had. From what I've seen from the fire ant people, they're fucking idiots. And I'm sure you're not surprised by that. And when it comes to the idea of what you do about fire ants, they are a biosecurity nightmare, it's just, well, I guess we just got to coexist with them. What? Or we need a natural solution. Yeah, cool story, bro. But there's no natural solution that's going to eradicate this. This is not going to happen. There's a whistleblower involved who I feel like I need to look into, because she got Queensland Whistleblower of the Year for whistleblowing on the project, and I have no idea why. I feel like I will be speaking well out of turn to not understand what's going on behind that. But my initial thoughts are cookers are stupid. Fire ants need eradicating, but there are flaws in the government approach. That seems to be the nutshell, the 3-second thing. The next thing that I want to say before we close out this solo episode, which I think I've only fucked up like twice on, but man, I would have liked to have had more drinks breaks. I need him back. I need a drink. That Raina Cruz, who is the sort of failed political candidate, drunk, angry fuckwit in South Australia, who viciously is, well, I'm going to leave all those details out. What I will say is that she got a 3-year suspended sentence for assaulting a police officer and various other charges. And she was already on a good behaviour bond at the time of the incident. We'll go into this in more detail because I know Jack has a lot to say about this. We talk about this over time. I think we've covered this before. The thing that I will leave this episode on is this very, very frustrating fucking quote, which has just made me so annoyed and just make jail, please. So they're planning to appeal the police union are lobbying DPP to appeal the sentence, and there's tons more details. But 9 News reported this, quote, leaving court yesterday, Cruz was asked if she wanted to say anything to her victim, Constable Beck, who, as a side note, she assaulted when it turns out she was pregnant. And the quote from Raina Cruz is, yes, I would say don't vaccinate your daughter. So giving this person a 3-year suspended sentence is not something that I, on face value, agree with. I have not read a judgment and I don't understand the case thoroughly. I do hope that there is an appeal. And I believe in another news article, Cruz said that she was planning to appeal herself. I wish her the best of luck with that because she got away with this. Anyway, there's a lot of details involved. We will compile them. We will discuss them. But I believe the next episode is going to be an easy one, which is already written, RFK Jr. Part 2. But either way, once Jack gets back from his fucking New Zealand, find myself tour, we can get back to regular programming. Thanks, guys. Join the Patreon.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Fuck me, you guys are bastards!